What's up guys, welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you'd like to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
Volume 14, Chapter 2, Projections for the Future, Part 1.
I chose to thank Veldora and Ramiris before I forgot. Veldora received clothing as his reward. Since he always wore a cloak and had nothing on his upper body, I worried that it could be awkward, but he didn't seem to mind. I grabbed the chance to give him some clothes as a gift because I thought maybe he loved this style of apparel.
Oh, Rimuru, my ally and friend. You've at last taken note of my emotions. I've always wished I was dressed nicely.
No, you could have immediately asked Shuna to grab it for you. In the clothing store, there were clothes whose sizes could be changed magically.
You idiot. I can only wear unique, custom-made clothing since nothing else will fit me. And if it was created by you, my dependable friend, then it must be the finest, right?
Actually, I have no sense of style. Veldora overestimates me, in my opinion. Even the clothing I wear are dictated to me by others. It seems to me that this was also true in my prior life. I had terrible taste in clothes for everyday use. I wore suits all the time because of this. The rest of my wardrobe was made up of jerseys. They were absolutely lovely. They were the most soothing thing in the world and I were not concerned about getting them dirty. The fact that Veldora seemed happier than I had anticipated caught me off guard. Veldora started putting on his clothes quickly and cheerfully.
I'm thrilled to hear that you're content. I anticipate needing your assistance once more in the future.
Let me handle it.
It turned out to be an absurdly low reward when you take into account the profit margin. Well, some of the clothing was made to order using expensive materials, but what can I say? I guess I'll come up with another way to thank him the next time I have some free time. When it comes to Veldora, I think it's best to put it off for a while. Ramiris was next.
Ramiris, this time you were also helpful. I appreciate it.
What? You're so pessimistic. I owe you as well. We refer to this as mutual assistance.
Ramiris responded with some embarrassment. Although I felt a little ashamed, I felt it was vital to convey my thanks.
For that reason, I decided to show my appreciation by giving you a gift.
What's happening? Did you make clothing for me the same way you did for Master?
You'll need to discuss that with Shuna. For myself,
Girls' clothing was out of my price range. For that, I'd rely on Shuna, therefore I suggested naming.
Does that imply that you can give my adorable tiny dragon lords names?
that sort of thing.
I'll be the parent, too.
That's correct.
That's fantastic.
Okay, sure. Even though I was also shocked, it made no difference because it genuinely worked.
Wenty, my colleague Adelman's pet, was named at the celebration yesterday. After that, it developed into a humanoid form and learned to talk clearly. Therefore, I was pondering whether your dragon lords would be intrigued by this as well.
It was unexpected that Wenty transformed into a human, but when you think about it, stories usually have dragons that do the same thing. It wasn't really out of the ordinary. The 4 dragon lords ruled by Ramiris might therefore have the ability to assume human bodies like Wenty. If so, she would have more manpower, which would lessen Beretta's struggles.
I rely on you if that's the case.
Ramiris cheerfully nodded. I asked for her permission before starting the session.
Do you have any suggestions for decent names?
I'll simply leave it up to you, I suppose.
Ramiris struggled to come up with creative names. The dragons would become like certain bosses in fantasy video games if I let her handle it. No, wouldn't it be alright? I suppose I didn't need to worry about it since I was the boss. I instructed Ramiris to assemble the dragon lords in the labyrinth's king's chamber. I reflected that they had also had numerous defeats as I saw the dragon lords positioned in front of me. They did their best though, so I tried to come up with appropriate names for them. An archdemon possessed less magicules than a dragon lord. The dragon lords here weren't as powerful, though, because Milam had only recently picked them up. Their intelligence would instantly rise if they could evolve through naming. If it were the case, they would advance in intelligence and strength. I should consider each of them individually and come up with a fitting name. The secret to this kind of stuff was intuition. Euros, the draconic flame lord, was the fire dragon lord. Zephyrus, the draconic frost lord, was the ice dragon lord. Notos, the draconic sky lord, was the wind dragon lord. Boreas, the draconic terra lord, was the earth dragon lord. These are names that I took from Greek mythology. The Greek gods who govern the winds of the east, west, north, and south are where the names of the dragon lords originally came from, but I felt they were appropriate for these dragon lords. Although I came up with the names for the dragon lords, Ramiris would be the one with whom the soul connection would be made. When I realized that this was likewise a success, I felt relieved. Ramiris and the Dragon Lords thus established a soul connection. I hoped that as Ramiris's official subordinates, they would continue to give it their all. So how did they evolve? The Dragon Lords could transform into human-like shapes as predicted. Even though they were mostly humanoid, they nevertheless retained some dragon traits. Draconic Flame Lord, Euros was a stunning lady with red hair. Her tail seemed to be a whip of flame, and her auburn skin was coated in a covering of dragon scales. Draconic Frost Lord, Zephyrus was a tall, attractive man. One might almost mistake him for a lovely woman due to his soft and graceful demeanor and long green hair. Draconic Skylord, Little Notos was a pretty girl. She was attractive from a distance, but on closer inspection, her teeth were jagged and she had fangs. She was a strong creature, yet her strength did not match her size. Draconic Terralord, Boreas was a tall, powerful man. He had spikes all over his body and was coated in dragon scales. The deformed beauty of the four of them was a combination of horror and beauty, and they all appeared to be the heads of a covert organization of evil. Such a form was merely a particular kind of state transition. They maintained their status as Dragon Lords rather than evolving into dragonoids like Milim. A dragonoid is ultimately a spiritual being with a physical form, much like an irregular version of a true dragon. Even though a Dragon Lord had great power, as long as it is contained within their own body, their strength will be considerably inferior to that of a true dragon, which was the pinnacle of all spiritual life. Even though the race had not changed, evolution was a complete success. They also appeared to have been successful in obtaining a stronger mana than anticipated. They appeared to have attained the level of an awakened claimant because their total magicule counts were significantly higher than they were before the transformation. They were a remarkable evolution, even though they weren't as good as a true demon lord. When naming alone demonstrated such an accelerated rate, I hated to imagine what might have occurred if I had ingested my own magicules. I might have done permanent harm to myself if I hadn't taken the actions I did. After all, naming was a horrible system. I was reminded once more that monsters were not rational beings after using more than 5,000 souls. It's only a loss though, if you care about it. So, the Dragon Lord's transformation was successfully accomplished, and it also served as a token of appreciation for Ramiris. In terms of magicules, Dungeon's Elite 10 were nearly equal. However, there seemed to be a significant disparity between them in terms of unquantifiable fighting power. It should go without saying that Zijin was the leader. The evolved Dragon Lords were still inferior to the other Elite 10 in terms of strength. In addition to having the ability to attack, they were monsters with considerable physical power. They have a variety of magic as well. These altogether surely constituted a strong and formidable force. That, however, was useless against individuals of the same rank who possessed battle prowess. They had very little fighting experience, which resulted in their fundamentally low skill level. In this defensive struggle, the Dragon Lords must have lost numerous times and been extremely frustrated. They requested more training as soon as they evolved and acquired the ability to speak human language with ease. The Dragon Lords were able to gain fighting expertise by taking on a humanoid shape. Then they understood that a skilled art was more potent than a monster's typical fighting technique. They utilized magic and incorporated it into their battle techniques rather than depending just on physical strikes using their breath, claws, and teeth. They next attempted to apply what they had learned about fighting as humans to actual warfare. It was a wonderful development that they were able to arrive at this judgment on their own. The training proposal was accepted.
Let me handle it.
Following Zijin's upbringing, Veldora was in a good mood and consented to train the Dragon Lords. Thus, the cultivation training for Dragon Lords got underway. Later on, it seemed as though some of the Dragon Lords were even more formidable in human form than they had been as dragons. That may appear to be a reversal, but because they had perfected the art of changing their own claws and scales into armor and weapons, the outcome was probably justifiable. It wasn't until much later that I learned about this, but I already felt it was inevitable. Calgurio and his squad have regained their composure after 3 days since their resurrection. When they learned that the Demon Lord had revived them, they were horrified. Even though it was indescribable, they managed to accept it. Which position should they adopt from this point forward? They continued to occupy tents. Food had been prepared and was delivered to them on a daily basis by monsters. Even if they were skeletons, no one protested. On a slope where the grass and trees had faded away, the tents were arranged in a line. Despite the unappealing scenery, the area was remarkably comfortable and neither hot nor cold. Once one became accustomed to them, the battlefield's ruins, the surrounding atmosphere of death, and the rows of graves for the dead posed no threat. The reason for this was that it would seem odd to be terrified of graves whose contents were constantly on display. In other words, it was a setting where they did not experience a lot of discontent in their day-to-day activities. The explanation stated that this location was on the labyrinth's 70th floor. Adelman, the White King in charge of watching over the labyrinth, was the one who provided the explanation. There was no one who questioned him because a few of them had actually engaged in combat inside the labyrinth. Calgurio and the rest were treated as true prisoners of war by Adelman, who was a decent man.
I have to follow my deity Rimuru-sama's instructions because he brought you back to life. You can take your time deciding what to do going forward because he is not the kind of person to take away your life after he has given it.
When Adelman said this, Calgurio and the rest were freed. They had never been advised to leave this hierarchy, either. They had already been entrusted to deity. They came to this realization and chose to have faith in Demon Lord Rimuru. Calgurio concurred with this choice and was confident that any attempt at escape would be unsuccessful. He took Adelman's advice to heart in light of this and decided to hold a meeting of the top management. In the big tent used for military meetings, there were close to 100 officers present. They were some of the top defenders of the empire and prominent officials. They were now, undoubtedly, powerless individuals.
Alright, men, I want to start by saying I'm sorry. This is a result of my incompetence, not yours. I apologize sincerely.
Calgurio bent his head as he surveyed the crowd. Everyone who responded denied it.
What do you mean? We share the same responsibility for not intervening, sir.
The chiefs of staff agreed when the deputy said so. Senior officials added that Calgurio wasn't the only one to blame. The most obvious one was Krishna.
I concur with everybody. Deity's anger has been provoked by our foolishness. And thanks to God's kindness, we have the chance to make up for our sins.
He considered the invasion of the empire itself to be sinful. Calgurio concurred with him. They had overestimated their military might, to the point where they knew nothing about their adversaries. Calgurio reflected on his past and realized how such a fool he had been. He smiled as if in relief and reasoned that his friends must share his sentiments.
Thank you. Now that you've said it, I'm a little less anxious. I swear to God that I will keep this emotion in my memory forever.
That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. Shout out to the new members of AnimeKouhai supporters: Marl Barsha, Jacob Philip Samson, Jason Martin, Sanketh Chalu, Homelike Drop, Edmund, Aditya Vyas, Andrew Lu, Ralph Ignacio, Fawaz Sala, Chris Nelson. Thank you so much for helping out. I'll see you guys in the next video.